Welcome to Leading Organizations That Matter, a podcast about leadership and how we find meaning, purpose, and impact in our work. I'm your host, Ray Spadoni, and today's topic is lessons from the restaurant industry. I was dining at a restaurant last night and noticed how completely packed it was. There wasn't an empty table in the place, and a big crowd had gathered in the waiting area. Business was good. I remember going to that same exact restaurant during the early days of the COVID pandemic for takeout and staring at the large empty dining room. I remember wondering if it would ever be full again, if we would ever return to some semblance of normalcy. You remember what those days were like. This reminded me of the fact that a few weeks before, I was out at a different restaurant with some friends, and during the course of the evening, we met the owner and started talking about her experience during the lockdown. She talked about paring down to just 3 people working there, moving exclusively to takeout, and the various efforts that they went through in order to pivot, to adjust, to adapt. As I said, we all remember those early months of COVID when we were all reeling from an experience that none of us had ever gone through before. Some of us wiped our groceries with antiseptic wipes, stockpiled toilet paper, and wore homemade masks, especially those of us who were working in the healthcare industry full time, where remote work just wasn't possible. There were these theories and some faint scientific reports during those days about how the virus spreads. And we were all hoping for some kind of miracle cure as we watched how many people were impacted, some quite severely, during those early days. In my hometown, there's a stretch of road containing some malls and a bunch of restaurants, and a simple inventory now of what was versus what remains, I think tells the full story. I think about one restaurant in particular that immediately went to takeout only. Employees would bring your food out to you while you waited in your car and handled the entire transaction using touchless devices. I remember they would ask if we wanted them to put the food in our back seats through an open window. They wore gloves and masks. Now, today we all know that that was overkill, but at the time it was quite reassuring. So for takeout, that's where we went. There's another restaurant directly across the street that we used to like to go to, and they weren't as adaptive. They struggled. They temporarily shut down, reopened, shut down again. And since then, they've just had a hard time staying open, hiring staff, regaining the traction that they once had. And honestly, we just never think about going there as our habits changed over time. A couple of days ago, I drove by there and saw that it was completely shut down. They didn't survive. Ability to pivot, adjust, and remain flexible. I think there's a very obvious but definitely critical lesson for all leaders here. Thanks for listening. Leaving a positive review and letting others know about this podcast will help a great deal. My mission is to help empower organizations that matter by supporting those who lead them. I offer coaching, mentoring, and consulting services. You can learn more about me and my work at rayspadoni.com.